The grand chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with a mix of anticipation and disdain. Towering crystalline pillars reflected the ambient glow of floating orbs, casting shifting shadows across the diverse array of alien delegates seated in a semicircle. The air was thick with the scent of exotic incense, a ceremonial display of the Council's long-held tradition. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Jonathan Rains, the lone human representative, dwarfed by the imposing alien figures surrounding him. Rains was composed, his sharp eyes scanning the room with calculated intent. He had faced this council before, but today was different. Today, he wasn't here to negotiate trade deals or settle territorial disputes. He was here to deliver a warning. The council's murmurs quieted as High Chancellor Threx raised a slender, clawed hand. His reptilian eyes glinted with amusement as he regarded the human with thinly veiled contempt. "Proceed, Ambassador Rains," Threx hissed, his voice a slick rasp that reverberated off the chamber walls. "Enlighten us on this threat your species wishes to present." Jonathan allowed himself a small smile, knowing full well how this would play out. He cleared his throat. "Members of the Council, I stand here not as a threat but as a messenger. We've heard your discussions, your plans to teach Earth its place in the galactic order. I am here to advise against such actions, for your sake, not ours." Laughter rippled through the chamber, a chorus of mocking tones from representatives of species who'd conquered entire star systems with ease. A hulking warlord from the Brutar Confederation, armored in bone and metal, leaned forward with a sneer. "You expect us to fear a backwater planet that still relies on chemical rockets?" Jonathan met his gaze without flinching. "You misunderstand us. Earth is not what it appears on the surface. Beneath our cities, hidden in the depths of our oceans, and cloaked within our atmosphere lies technology designed for one purpose: survival. We don't seek war, but we have prepared for it." The Brutar warlord barked out a guttural laugh. "Prepared? Your kind is barely crawling out of your gravity well. Our fleets will. They will be torn apart," Jonathan interjected calmly, his voice cutting through the bravado. "We've had time, decades of it. Time to study your tactics, your technology, and more importantly, your weaknesses. What you see as primitive is precisely what we want you to believe." The room fell into a tense silence. Jonathan's words carried a weight that lingered, despite the Council's disbelief. Threx leaned back in his ornate seat, his expression hardening. "Are you suggesting that humanity would dare challenge the might of the Galactic Council?" "No," Jonathan replied, his tone flat. "I'm suggesting that if you proceed, you'll regret underestimating us." Threx's lip curled into a mocking grin. "Enough of these games. The Council has voted. Your Earth will be subjugated and brought into compliance like every other rogue world that stood in our way." Jonathan's smile faded, replaced by cold resolve. "Then I hope you're ready for what comes next." With that, he turned and exited the chamber, leaving behind a room filled with uneasy whispers. As the doors closed behind him, the Council resumed its discussion, this time tinged with a hint of uncertainty. Threx silenced them with a dismissive wave. "Deploy the fleet. Let us see if these humans are as clever as they claim." As Jonathan walked down the silent corridors of the Council's flagship, he allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. Earth was ready, more ready than any of these arrogant conquerors could imagine. He reached into his pocket and activated a hidden communicator. "This is Rains. They're coming." A voice crackled back, steady and unwavering. "Understood. We'll be waiting." Jonathan allowed himself a final, grim smile. The game was set, and soon, the galaxy would learn that humanity was no longer a species to be trifled with. The Galactic Council's warships drifted through the black void, sleek and bristling with weapons that had subjugated countless worlds. At the helm of the lead ship, the Ascendant Will, Commander Corvus watched the readouts on his console with a satisfied grin. His scarred mandibles twitched with anticipation. This was supposed to be a swift and decisive operation. Earth was a minor nuisance, an inconsequential planet about to be taught its place. "All ships prepare to engage," Corvus ordered, his voice grating like metal on stone. "Their orbital defenses should be laughable at best. We'll neutralize them within minutes. The fleet surged forward, engines humming with the raw energy of antimatter reactors. In the heart of the bridge, Corvus leaned back into his command chair, his cold eyes fixed on the blue-green orb steadily growing larger on the view screen. It would be a quick victory, a reminder to any species that dared defy the Council's authority. But something gnawed at the edge of his mind, a faint doubt planted by the human ambassador's unwavering confidence. What if they really were hiding something? He pushed the thought aside. They were just primitives, after all. How dangerous could they be? As the fleet entered low orbit, the first warning signs flickered on his console, anomalies in Earth's electromagnetic field, subtle distortions that didn't align with the expected signatures. Corvus narrowed his eyes. What's causing that interference? He snapped. One of his officers, a thin, insected creature with compound eyes, hissed in alarm. Unclear, Commander. Scans show no active energy sources matching known weapon profiles. It's as if the atmosphere itself is resonating. Before Corvus could respond, the ship's alarms blared. A surge of energy, sudden and overwhelming, crackled through the fleet. The view screen flickered, displaying bursts of static interlaced with distorted images. The flagship's stabilizers groaned as unseen forces gripped it from all sides. Panic rippled through the crew. Shields up! Evasive maneuvers! Corvus barked, but it was too late. From the depths of Earth's oceans, hundreds of silent, sleek craft rocketed upward, moving with impossible precision. These were not the lumbering warships the Council expected. They were predators, purpose-built for the kill. In an instant, they swarmed the invaders, their weapons systems designed not to destroy but to disable and capture. Pulses of magnetized plasma severed power conduits and fried targeting systems, leaving the Council's ships dead in space, helpless against the coordinated onslaught. Corvus watched in stunned silence as his fleet was systematically crippled. His confidence evaporated, replaced with icy dread. The humans had baited them, drawing them into a trap so subtle, so precise, that it left no room for retaliation. He realized, too late, that this was never about brute force. It was a lesson in strategy, in cunning that outmatched the Council's arrogance. Desperation crept into his voice as he transmitted a message back to the Council's command center. This is Commander Corvus. We are under attack by unknown forces. Our fleet is compromised. They're capturing us. We need immediate reinforcements. Static answered him. Earth's defenses had jammed their communications completely, isolating the invaders from any hope of assistance. As the bridge lights dimmed, Corvus stared at the screen, watching in disbelief as the humans' vessels encircled the last of his fleet. The Ascendant was shook violently as docking clamps latched onto its hull. From the darkness, figures in sleek, black armor boarded the ship, moving with precision and purpose. Corvus clenched his fists, fury and fear warring within him. What do they want? He muttered through gritted teeth. A calm voice echoed through the bridge, transmitted from the lead human ship. Welcome to Earth, Commander Corvus. You've underestimated us, and now you'll see just how far we've come. The tension in the air was palpable as Corvus realized that the humans weren't just defending their planet. They were playing a much larger game, and the Council was about to learn the consequences of underestimating a species that had spent its entire history surviving against impossible odds. The captured Galactic Council commanders were paraded down dimly lit corridors, their once proud forms stripped of weapons and dignity. Corvus walked at the front, flanked by human soldiers clad in unyielding black armor. The air was thick with tension, a sharp contrast to the Council's earlier arrogance. Corvus's eyes darted around the alien ship's interior, nothing like the sterile, mechanical designs of Council vessels. Here, the walls hummed softly, embedded with technology that felt alive, almost organic. What is this place? One of Corvus's subordinates whispered, voice tinged with fear. Quiet! Corvus snapped, but his own nerves were fraying. The humans had turned the tables so decisively, leaving him reeling. But beyond the humiliation, something darker gnawed at him. These were not the simple primitives the Council had expected. These humans were unpredictable, capable of crafting strategies that slipped through the cracks of even the most advanced analyses. The group was ushered into a spacious chamber. At its center stood a single figure, unarmored but exuding a presence that demanded attention. This was no warlord or conqueror, but someone far more dangerous, a strategist. His eyes held the calm confidence of someone who had already won the game. "Welcome, Commander Corvus." The human's voice was smooth, laced with a faint, almost mocking smile. "I'm Captain Elias Ward, the one responsible for coordinating this lesson in humility." Corvus's mandibles clicked in frustration. "You think this will end in your favor, human? The Council will bring reinforcements that'll reduce this entire planet to ash." Ward didn't flinch. "Perhaps. But they'll first have to understand the true nature of the battlefield. You see, while the Council relies on brute force, we've spent generations perfecting something more subtle: control over information." With a wave of his hand, holographic screens flickered to life around the chamber, displaying intercepted Council transmissions, schematics of Council ships, and detailed psychological profiles of high-ranking officials. Every secret, every weakness laid bare. Corvus's eyes widened. "How? We've been preparing for this for years," Ward interrupted, his voice steely now. "You assumed we'd crumble under the weight of your technological superiority. Instead, we exploited your overconfidence, turning your strengths into liabilities. By the time your reinforcements arrive, the damage will already be done." The realization crashed over Corvus like a tidal wave. The Council's greatest strength, its reliance on information supremacy, had been subverted. Everything they had built was now at risk, vulnerable to the humans' carefully orchestrated web of misinformation and psychological warfare. Corvus surged forward, fists clenched. "You can't possibly expect to win against the full might of the Galactic Council. We have numbers, firepower, everything you lack." Ward's expression remained neutral. "And yet here you are, Commander, captured and helpless. Numbers and firepower mean little when you don't know what's real anymore. We've lured your entire fleet into a ghost war, chasing phantoms while the real threat operates in the shadows." Suddenly, the chamber's lights dimmed, and a map of the galaxy appeared, highlighting key Council territories. Red markers began appearing one by one, locations where human infiltrators had embedded themselves, destabilizing key systems. Each mark represented a strategic blow, not of brute force but of manipulation, subversion, and misdirection. Corvus's bravado faltered. "You're bluffing." Ward leaned in closer, eyes cold and unyielding. "You'll soon realize the Council's grip is not as unshakable as you thought. By the time you return, if you return, you'll be facing a very different galaxy." The room fell silent, the weight of the unspoken truth pressing down on everyone present. For the first time in his long career, Corvus felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: fear. Not the primal fear of death or defeat, but the deeper, gnawing terror of watching everything he knew crumble, powerless to stop it. Ward turned away, signaling for the prisoners to be taken to their cells. As Corvus was led out, the last thing he heard was the captain's final words, laced with quiet determination. "Underestimate humanity again, and it'll be your last mistake." Corvus sat alone in his cell, the low hum of the ship's systems the only sound breaking the silence. Shadows danced across the metallic walls, flickering like the remnants of his shattered confidence. The weight of Ward's words gnawed at him. He had dismissed humans as a lesser species, but in this moment, he couldn't ignore the cold truth: they had outmaneuvered him at every turn. This wasn't a simple battle of might. It was a war of perception, information, and psychological warfare, arenas where humanity thrived. Suddenly, the door slid open with a sharp hiss. A human guard entered, his expression unreadable. "You're wanted in the command center," he said flatly. Corvus didn't resist as he was escorted through winding corridors, each step bringing him closer to an inevitable confrontation with Ward. When they arrived, the command center was a hive of activity. Human officers worked swiftly, their movements precise and coordinated. At the center of it all stood Captain Ward, observing a holographic map displaying the ongoing disarray within the Galactic Council's territories. Red markers indicated key council systems destabilizing one by one, a clear sign that Ward's plans were already in motion. "Ah, Commander Corvus," Ward said without looking up, his voice calm but edged with finality. "I wanted you here to witness the moment when your council's overconfidence crumbles." Corvus's mandibles clicked in frustration. "You've made your point, human. But if you think this ends with you victorious, you're delusional. The Council's might is still unmatched." Ward finally turned to face him, a slight smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "You misunderstand, Commander. This isn't about conventional victory, it's about shifting the balance. The Galactic Council has ruled through fear and domination for centuries, believing themselves invincible. But all it takes is one fracture, one destabilizing force, to topple even the most powerful empires." The tension in the room was palpable. Corvus's gaze shifted back to the hologram, where entire fleets were in disarray, responding to phantom threats and chasing false information. Human saboteurs had infiltrated key systems, feeding the Council misinformation and eroding trust within its own ranks. It was chaos engineered to perfection. A human officer approached Ward, handing him a data pad. "It's time, sir." Ward nodded, then turned back to Corvus. "The Council's reinforcements are en route, as expected. But by the time they arrive, their command structure will be in tatters. They'll be divided, unsure of who to trust, and most importantly, vulnerable. We've used your own arrogance against you, Commander." Corvus clenched his fists, struggling to maintain his composure. "This is madness. You're playing with fire, and it'll consume you." "Perhaps," Ward conceded. "But humanity has always thrived in the face of impossible odds. You underestimated our capacity for adaptation and resilience. And now, it's your council that will burn, not by our hands, but by the seeds of doubt and discord you sowed yourselves." The screens flashed as the hologram updated in real time. Reports of mutinies, rogue factions, and internal conflicts within council-controlled territories spread like wildfire. The Council's grip on its empire was slipping, not because of any direct confrontation, but through the erosion of trust and unity, the very foundations of its power. Ward stepped closer to Corvus, his voice a quiet, controlled whisper. "This is the difference between us and you. The Council saw us as a primitive nuisance to be crushed, but we saw them for what they truly are, an empire built on the illusion of control. And once that illusion shatters, there's no force in the galaxy that can put it back together." Corvus felt a cold shiver run through him. For the first time in his life, he was witnessing the collapse of something that had once seemed eternal. The Council's arrogance had blinded them to the real threat, humanity's relentless determination and ingenuity. They had laughed at Earth's warnings, dismissing them as bluster. Now, the laughter had turned to desperate cries for order among the chaos. Captain Ward turned away, giving a final order to his crew. "Prepare to broadcast the message. Let the galaxy see the fall of tyranny." As Corvus was led back to his cell, the distant echoes of human voices filled the corridors, a sound not of triumph, but of resolve. The galaxy would remember this day not as humanity's victory, but as the moment when they proved that even the mightiest empires could be brought low by those they deemed insignificant. The balance of power had shifted, and the universe would never be the same.